This month for forums. Today we have the Governance Committee. We're pleased that they're here to talk about the new governance structure and how that affects the work of the council and our parish. Next week we'll have a forum related to the topic of affordable child care. Brian Rushi, who was here a few weeks ago, will be talking from his perspective as the director of the Joint Religious Legislative Coalition, and Joanne Ward, who is from St. Mark's and a member of the Minnesota House, will give her perspective as a legislator. And then on the 16th, Bishop Bruce will be back in the fireplace room, continuing his series of forums related to our search. And this one will have something to do with the CAT scan, the church assessment tool, and the next steps in the search process. And we have some other ones planned going forward. During Lent, we'll be looking at scripture in particulars. Cynthia Bronson-Swigert is going to do a forum on the lectionary cycle that we're in right now. And then we'll have a couple of weeks when we're looking at the lectionary readings for the day, one week with Dorothy Kunze and one with Bill Donovan. And then Cynthia is going to do a forum on the readings for Passion Sunday. So without further ado, are you ready to go ahead?
I'm ready.
Okay. Our new senior warden, Joanne Chris.
Thank you. Greetings to all of you this morning. I have a gyroscope and I'll explain that later to you. We, and that is, the we is Doug Eichton, Pat Betzinger, Tony Weiner, Warren Moss, and I started working together on Governance Task Force nearly 2 years ago. We were asked to search all available governance documents to determine their relevance and to suggest appropriate changes in advance of the call of a new dean. We were to determine the appropriateness, applicability, and usefulness of our corporate documents and structures. As we became familiar with all of the documents, we felt we needed to consult other similar documents drawn up by similar cathedrals. So we did that. We consulted quite a few, and after studying and comparing quite a few documents from quite a few cathedrals, we began to see where our documents fell on the continuum of such documents, and we were able to identify the areas of particular interest to us at this moment at St. Mark's. We looked as closely as we were able to the structures identified in the documents, and looked also at what we perceived to be our current practices, to see how well we were following the intent expressed in our foundation documents, where there was a great gap between what we said we would do or who we said we were and what we actually did, and were we trying to close that gap. This is painstaking work, and this group wanted to leave no stone unturned and to make sure we looked at the words from the standpoint of all stakeholders. We were also well advised by the bishop and Bishop Bruce when we asked for help and guidance. We do not consider this to be a once and for all process, but rather to be a thorough but presumably ongoing effort to match our intentions with our outcome as best we can. So henceforth, there will be a governance committee year-round to continue to monitor governance issues, including the gathering of nominations and the running of the elections. So before Warren talks to you about the way the several governing bodies within our church relate to one another, to you and to others, and Tony talks to you about the alignment of committees, commissions, and liaisons, I would like to spend a moment talking about governance. I have been searching throughout this process for a model or a metaphor for talking about governance. Too often, I find that I tend to see maps better upside down than right side up. I can't explain it. So ordinary flowcharts don't necessarily work for me. They also seem to have a static quality that living organizations don't have, and to suggest a kind of forcing of natural flows into unnatural paths. So the metaphor I have chosen for the governance and organization of the church is the gyroscope. I brought one along for illustrative purposes or for you to play with afterwards. The gyroscope is reversible. It will spin on either end. And the way I would like you to look at the gyroscope is that it, on one end stands you, and on other end stands the other. And in between is the working of the church. It's reversible. You can look at it from either standpoint, but the business of governance is the business of making sure that connection works as best as it can. And just for the purposes of my metaphor for a moment, please just think of teacher, student, cook, guest, greeter, visitor, Eucharistic minister, communicant, me sick, you knitting a shawl. These are the sort of things that happen, that flow through this gyroscope that we call it church. In order for all of these occasions to occur within the context of our church, a great deal of activity is happening within this org, the church, to create the space, the time, the opportunity for these activities to occur. And that activity, thank God, does not stop. It goes round and round thanks to thousands of people, past, present, and future, who keep it going round. Now imagine something like the flying Walendas at the center of the earth, helping to make sure all of these connections work and work as well as possible. And that is how I've come to see our working bodies, our governance. And the work we are asked to do inside that org ensures that those primary vital connections can occur in a smooth, safe, thoughtful, and godly way. So in our church, our cathedral, Warren will describe that there are 3 groups of actors. The council, led by 3 officers, the chapter, directed by the bishop, and the staff with the dean at its head. Now imagine for a moment a second gyroscope representing the new council. Flying around in the center of this org are the committees, the commissions, and the liaisons as they reach out to each of you and are informed of all the pertinent and meaningful actions happening day by day, person by person, inside and outside of this cathedral. But please remember, this is a living, breathing, growing, changing, active place, which is, from the opening words to our Constitution, established to the glory of God and for the good of all people. I only wish Doug Eichten could be here too. He was a wise, patient, always directed, always open chair of this group. Much of the credit is due him, and I thank him for his great leadership. And Pat Betzinger was, as many of you already know, a font of knowledge about the way things work here, thoughtful, flexible, and a delight to work with, as were both the members I now introduce. Warren Moss, the other warden, will talk about the council, chapter, and the staff of the church. Then Tony will talk about committees, commissions, and liaisons. We will then answer questions to the best of our ability. Thanks. Warren?
It's perhaps not bad when the junior warden had notes and forgot them at home today. So I'm going to do this from memory. One of the early meetings that we had was with Bishop Brian Pryor, who described what he believed, and I'm imagining that it's not just him, what a cathedral is. We wanted to define what is a cathedral. It was a question we kept asking ourselves, so what's a cathedral? And he said it has three functions. It is, of course, a parish. As a parish, it is no different than, say, St. Luke's in Wilmer. It is made up of a body of parishioners who have meetings. Second, it is the home of the bishop. And as the home of the bishop, it has responsibilities to the Episcopal Church in Minnesota, also known as the diocese, or formerly known as the diocese. I'm hoping that someone doesn't change like the rock and roll star, that we change our name to some symbol or something. But right now, we are the Episcopal Church in Minnesota, is what the diocese was. And then finally, we were to consider ourselves what Bishop Pryor called the cathedral on the hill. In our case, the cathedral by the park, or cab drivers would call it the cathedral by the bottleneck. So those are the three functions that a cathedral has. And so we then began to think, who is responsible for what? Who is responsible to whom? And so we decided to look at the chapter. Now, in the past, the chapter has been inactive. It is what the former structure was, that the cathedral is to be governed by the chapter, which is made up of the executive committee. And by the way, there never was a vestry for St. Mark's, because vestry is a term that's applied to all parishes except cathedrals. So we had an executive committee, and then about 4 times a year was a chapter meeting. Chapter then was the executive committee plus a variety of people either appointed or elected that would join the executive committee, and it had governance authority over the cathedral. I'm not sure of all of the history. I don't know everything about what has happened, and a lot of it would be speculation, but that chapter meetings became nothing different than the other vestry meetings, for lack of a better term. And the people that were appointed and elected and outside of St. Mark's stopped coming. And so it had no voice, even though it had official governance over the cathedral. So what we've decided is something that's sort of counterintuitive. Separated the chapter off from the council, gave it back to the Episcopal Church in Minnesota, put people with authority on the chapter. That is, there will be council members, there will be one of the wardens, and the dean will be a part of the chapter. It will meet 4 times a year, and it will decide, it will advise the council as to issues that the council should be aware of. So that we hope that by doing it this way, the council will actually be more informed and better advised as to what our role in the ECMN will be. Now, as to the other 2 missions of a cathedral, we've got the dean and we've got the council. We chose the word council, by the way. Tony was the one who came up with that one. A council assumes that there are the leaders of the various stakeholders come together and consult with each other. And so let me start with the overall thing. The dean and the council are to act in partnership, not one deciding That being the case, we put into the statutes, I think, that there will be a mutual evaluation of the dean and the council right away within 6 months of the dean's arrival, and then on an annual basis. And it's mutual. It is not one rating the other and saying you better change this, but it is one advising the other and supporting the other's mission. The council then will not be presided by the dean. It will be presided by the wardens. We'll set the agenda and we'll direct and to some degree manage the workings of the council. The dean will be in charge of the staff and the clergy, and two will work in partnership with it, so that the council will have liaisons. I'm getting into Tony's area here, aren't I? Okay, so anyway, that's the structure. We've not got. What we're hoping to do is that all of these missions, which somehow got lost, will start to be attended to. Our being responsible to and responsible for the congregation will be greater because of elections, because that will be the focus of the council. Our mission to the community will be greater because of the chapter, and our mission to the Episcopal Church in Minnesota will be enhanced by this division of labors. Did I miss anything?
Thank you very much.
Hi, so I'm talking with you about this council in relationship to the bodies that it works through, which come in basically three categories. That is committees, commissions, and liaisons. Now, I want to start by emphasizing something that Warren said, and that is this difference between the word council on the one hand and the word vestry on the other. And I'm sure that many people think, oh, this is just a cosmetic word change that probably won't have much substance. And indeed, the council is taking the place of the vestry and is chosen and elected on an annual basis the way the vestry had been, although under different procedures, as most of us have seen. But it's not just a name change, although it will operate along the same lines and fulfill some of the same functions. When I looked at the word council in the dictionary, there are many definitions, but the one that resonates, I think, in this context is council can be a group of delegates representing local interests in a federation. And that's, of course, but that's the kind of idea we're going for, as opposed to a committee, which is just individuals who represent their own interests and do what they think is best. A council involves constitutive interests that are all meeting at the same place. And that difference, I think, will hopefully become clear as I go into detail about the committees, commissions, and liaisons. Under the new system, there are 5 distinct committees. And the committees are, let's see, I have them written down here, but the committees are, first of all, the property committee, the finance committee, and the property, finance, stewardship, governance, and personnel.
What was the last one?
Personnel.
Oh.
And first of all, it's a change to have the 5 committees spelled out like that. The old statutes didn't spell out what they were. They were just at the discretion of the old vestry and the dean. So now we have those 5 committees, and that is, again, finance, property, governance, stewardship, and personnel. And one major change, which is a big change, is the requirement that all the committee chairs must be members of the council, which was not the case before. Before, under the old Vestry system, there were committees that conceivably no member of the committee was even on the vestry. And so one of the big changes this makes is to make sure that every single committee chair is a member of the vestry. Not only that, the wardens appoint the committee chairs as opposed to anybody else appointing the committee chairs. And the wardens and the members of the committee serve at the pleasure of the council. So the council is really in the driver's seat with respect to all this work that the 5 committees do. Property, finance, governance, stewardship, and personnel. And the way it's structured, nothing can happen with any of these committees that the council isn't monitored about and indirectly, at least, in charge of. So those are, I view the committees, those 5 areas, property, finance, personnel, stewardship, and governance, as being sort of management operations. Commissions are something else. We now have 3 commissions: outreach, welcoming, and cathedral life. And I view the commissions as being sort of service operations. And the type of things that are in the Outreach Commission, for example, are Sunday night supper, Monday night supper, the Trader Joe's sort, Habitat for Humanity, when we're doing it, the Sandwich Ministry, and Warm Space. That would all be under Outreach. Under Welcoming would be the ushers, the greeters, the newcomer ministry, and coffee hour hospitality. Under Cathedral Life, it would be types of groups like the LGBT group, intergenerational events, senior events, book clubs, and the prayer shawl ministry. Now, each commission has a commission chair. And notionally, at least, the commission chairs would most often be on the council also. But that's not that unlike the situation with the committees. It's not a hard and fast rule. But notionally, there would be a good degree of oversight by the council over the commissions, because the 3 commissioners, Outreach, Welcoming, and Cathedral Life, would be reporting to the council on a regular basis. So once again, the council is going to be in charge of at least having substantial oversight over what the commissions do. And then the third group of operations is undertaken under the more direct authority and responsibility of the new dean. These can be called staff support functions, and the staff support functions will nevertheless serve in a sort of liaison capacity to the council, so that they will liaise with the council, but the council isn't directly responsible for them in the same way that the council is responsible for the work of the committees and commissions. And these functions that are directly under the dean are things like communications, education, liturgy and music, safety and security, and the bookstore. So these are 3 different types of operations that with the committees and the commissions are pretty much squarely under the direction of the council. The third group is under the control of the dean, but there will be substantial liaison work between the dean's staff and the council members with respect to those operations. So now I guess we're throwing it open for questions.
I have a question. What was formerly the Vestry is now called the chapter or the council?
The council.
The council. I've heard 2 different.
Okay, this is the thing. This is a group of, well, you're here, so you're probably interested in this, so you probably have some patience with this. So as Warren said, legally, with our own internal documents, there never was a Vestry. It was a figment of our imagination. What we thought of as the Vestry was actually the executive committee of the chapter. Our old constitution, our own statutes never used the word Vestry. That's a word that was used in this building to describe something that did not exist on paper. And what the word Vestry described was the executive committee of the chapter. And the thing about the chapter was that it was 6 people appointed by the bishop of the ECMN, 3 people elected at the convention, the statewide convention, and then this executive committee that the cathedral elected. So the chapter, as it was constructed, was top-heavy with people from outside the cathedral building. But as and that was the body that had ultimate authority. And as Warren said, those people who were elected by the annual convention and those people who were nominated by the bishop never showed up. So under this new same framework, we still have a chapter, but it exists up there at the ECMN building. It doesn't have any direct governance authority over the cathedral.
So it's the cathedral council.
The cathedral council is the new governing body.
Why don't you just eliminate the chapter? It doesn't seem to have any role, and if I understand you correctly, the dean reports to not the committee council, but I assume to the bishop. Or is it now the chapter? It looks to me as though the chapter is an unnecessary group. Well, here's the thing. Again, I said it's counterintuitive. But the chapter will exist, and the chapter will have, I think, a greater voice in what goes on, because it will actually meet, and it will have an agenda, and it will come back to the council, and it will say, this is what you need to do in regard to St. Luke's and Wilmer. Or this is an activity that we would like you to do on behalf of the ECMN. As far as the reportability of the dean, it's sort of complicated. There's a canon law which he certainly reports to the bishop, but he will have responsibility to the chapter or the council as well. So, but
Can you
remember,
give us
the
an
council
example
and
of
the dean
something
are
that
supposed to advise each other.
chapter would do?
We have two questions going at once. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Do that one first, and I'll come back to
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean
It's
to.
all right.
The dean and the council advise each other. But the dean doesn't report to the council, if I understand you correctly. No, the dean.
The dean will report on a monthly basis.
No, I don't mean orally. I mean in terms of if they disagree, who makes a decision. That's the importance of the mutual evaluation of the. Oh, all right, but not everything is always mutual, and it's human.
So there's a whole canonical process when there's disagreement, and the bishops engaged in that as well as the council. So it's laid out. It's sort of a universal process around the church, so it's not unique to this place. If there's a disagreement in leadership.
And Bruce, I think we really did discuss this at length, going to either all the extremes of the answers, or one that you suggested, which is do away with it, to give greater voice. And we've decided that it is in a weakened state, that the representation of the ECMN within our church it weakened for whatever historical reason. And we have an opportunity now to strengthen it if that's the right thing to do. And that will depend on the people who decide to become part of the chapter, on the bishop, him or herself, whoever it may be, and on the will of the congregation. But it is a fact that we're a cathedral. And so we did finally, after deliberating, came down on the idea that yes, we must respect and recognize that, encourage it, strengthen it if it's possible. I mean, the time will tell whether that part of the three legs of this stool will get stronger, get weaker, or maybe express itself in some other way. But this was the best we could do at the moment. Our big task really was to pull that confusion between chapter and executive committee, to tease that apart a little bit, so that hopefully both have meaning. And again, what we said we're doing and what we're doing are a little closer. It was far away when we started. That chapter wasn't functioning really the way the original writings intended. But it's, that's a good question, and it's a live one.
Going back to Joanne's gyroscope analogy, if you flip it, things change. And this is what we're hoping to do. So we're going to put the chapter at the ECMN, hopefully give it a greater voice, because we will have council members and so forth on the chapter who will come back. And we don't know what the chapter is going to recommend. One of the things that we thought, for example, was, what can the St. Mark's do for other churches? And one of the things we thought was we could have a choir tour, we could bring our musical ministry out to other congregations is an example. What else we can do, I don't know. We've got a lot of expertise at this church, and there are other churches that may need our help.
Now, go ahead, please. You had a question?
That was my question.
Oh.
What concrete will the chapter maybe do? And I gather we don't really know much. We just
Not yet.
sort of think that it's a need there.
Right.
Mary?
Will the chapter be advisory, or will it have authority?
I can speak to that. I'm looking at, this is new language we put in the Constitution of the Cathedral. And it says, the chapter shall have an advisory role in partnership with the cathedral, the ECMN congregations, and the bishop. The chapter shall have no governance role regarding the cathedral or any congregation, except as required by law. And that, for one reason we couldn't get rid of the chapter totally, is that, believe it or not, there are statutes in the Minnesota annotated statutes that refer to the governance of Episcopal cathedrals. Which sort of bowled me over when I saw that. There aren't in the Minnesota statutes annotated, which is our collection of state laws. I didn't see any specific statutes talking about Catholic and Catholic cathedrals, or Lutheran congregations, or Methodist congregations. But there are two statutes that talk all about Episcopal cathedrals. So, I don't know, I can guess how that happened, but it's just a guess. And these statutes refer to a chapter, so one of the reasons we couldn't get rid of the chapter is that there are various state laws that refer to chapters of Episcopal cathedrals. But we believe that these two sentences, saying that its role is solely advisory, and that it has no governance authority over the cathedral, answer our third.
Go ahead.
So there is a committee of the council with personnel, but the dean also has responsibility for staffing. What's the connection or the difference between the two?
The committee, I think, is labeled human resources at this point, and it would deal with the questions that affect the congregation. I think that the organizational questions and hiring and firing as it affects the body of the cathedral. So I guess I don't want to confuse it too much. We would not hire and fire. The council would not do that. That is the province of the dean when she or he comes. Go ahead.
I'm the executive director of a nonprofit agency, and I've got a board of directors which sets policy for the agency. As executive director, I follow the policies set by the board of directors. Council is going to be analogous to, not exactly, but analogous to the board of directors, and it sets policy. It says this is what we, the congregation of St. Mark's, believe ought to be the policy for hiring and firing. But the dean has the authority to do the hiring and firing. There's no question about that.
I like you, Tony. I'm shocked that there be any statutes in the state law, because I thought church and state were separate.
Seriously, I'm being very serious, and I'm unappalled. And then on the other hand, a suggestion for the cathedral would be for the youth. Do they ever have the other churches over for a sleepover and get together?
Oh, yeah.
Do that? Well, I think that's a big. I would think that would be a big thing. I like the idea of just the choir, and I think that's something. But it'd be fun maybe to have some visiting choirs here too. Making the cathedral more of a central part. We talked about that years ago when I was on Vestry, and I agree. Chapter members, it was appalling. Like 3 would come. And actually some would drive down from Duluth. I was shocked at that. But the attendance record from the chapter members when we had that meeting was rather appalling.
Well, and the agenda never reflected anything about the chapter, so why would they want to attend it? So when you separate it out, they set an agenda which is all chapter, and then that comes back to what
I've looked at the results of the church assessment tool several times, and I think in some depth. It's my understanding from that assessment tool and the report that came back that governance was one of the key drivers for why we are in what's lovingly referred to as a recovery quadrant. See where I'm head going up and down, so there's at least someone here that agrees with me in that understanding. My question is, what will the chapter be doing to, as the author of that study said, continue the conversation and drive the changes that I think we all want to see, which is that it's up into the Northeast?
Are you asking for concrete action steps? Because I'm not sure that.
I don't think it's time for that yet.
Right.
I guess perhaps the question ought to be, is my understanding shared, and is there a commitment to continuing the conversation, and how's that going to happen?
Can you rephrase that? I didn't quite get that. Yeah, can you please rephrase the question?
Looking at the church assessment tool, which I've done a couple of times, and I think in some depth, one of the drivers for why we are in the recovery quadrant is governance. And my question to our governance folks at the front is, what are they going to do to, as the author of that study said, continue the conversation and help drive us into where we want to be, which is excited and engaged rather than discouraged and disengaged.
Well, the one thing I want to say in reaction, in response to Dana's question, which I think is a very good question, is that we were very fortunate this morning that my 2 friends here were both on the governance task force this last 2 years, and are, by happy coincidence, the 2 wardens going forward in the council. And I want to point out that those, as I see it, are 2 distinct functions. And I think it's great to talk about directions we move into the future in terms of policy. But the council and the wardens and the team have shared responsibility moving forward as to the best operational frameworks to engage in. This governance role is talking about the different types of operations on a regular basis that are entered into, and not necessarily policy, if that makes sense. No, it does.
And just to reiterate what I said in the introductory remarks, we now have a governance committee. We did not have a governance committee before. So we obviously felt that it needs just exactly what you said. This discussion needs to be carried on. It's not the discussion, but it's one of the discussions that needs to go forward.
Yeah, it just reminded me of Dana's question that in education, we try to have this principle where the people that are most affected by a decision need to take part in the decision making, you may have heard of this before. Is that something that's built into this system you're talking about?
Well, one thing I can say is that the focus here is democratization. And most effective by, we're trying to have honest-to-gosh real elections to the council, as opposed to the old framework whereby the dean and the outgoing members of Vestry would get together and come up with names that they thought would be good for the new Vestry and have the congregation vote up or down or yea or nay, and who would be foolish enough to do anything other than vote for what the leadership told them to vote for. So one thing, I take at least part of the focus of your question to be about responsiveness. And one way we try to bring more responsiveness to it is to have this system of elections where there are actually more candidates than there are seats running, and where there would be more of an actual choice. Another way we try to improve responsiveness is, again, by making sure that the chairs of all the committees would be members of the council and that they would serve at the pleasure of the council. And both of those are new arrangements. So those are two ways of, and from a governance standpoint, increasing responsiveness. Now, actually on the ground responsiveness, that can be determined by the people who are doing things. That's what's in their hearts and minds, what they feel they have to do. But we have great people running things, so I think that will be addressed.
And I think I just would like to add that we have been dedicated to transparency, which is one of those words that's maybe used to the point of not useful anymore.
We can see right through it.
Exactly. And I would suggest a word like permeability is better, where you actually can get through. It's not just a matter of seeing through, but you can get through, so that the people, I feel strongly the work gets done on the ground here. And part of what needs to happen is to hold that up and respect it, support it, care for it in the best way we can. And that's slightly beyond transparency, I think, into permeability. And I totally agree. Go ahead.
In terms of the partnership between the dean and the council, I'm sure there will be some disagreements and things like that, but I think if you were, say, wanted to be a potential candidate for dean, and if you were the type of person that said, I'd really like to be in charge of a cathedral, given the framework that we have now, you're probably not going to get those people that really want to be the kind of the autocratic type even applying, because they know right from the beginning that this is going to be a partnership, and there's going to have to be a consensus type person.
Does that make you unhappy? Does that make you unhappy, Lowell?
No, I think that would result in less conflicts down the line.
Why you're not fine?
That's right. The other question of pastoral care would be under the dean's domain.
Yes.
But there wouldn't be such a commission or.
No, that's the concept of liaison. We definitely want to have all the avenues open for communication between everybody. I mean, and as somebody pointed out, there's going to be overlap all over the place. HR is just one, property and finance. I mean, it isn't as neat as it looks, but it's much more dynamic than it looks, and that's what I was trying to say. So essentially, what we don't want is for the council to stand in the way of the people who are hired to do a job. That would be counterproductive, and maybe one of those boundary issues that if you have proper boundaries and governance, you don't run into it quite as often. That's the whole. So we don't want anybody to feel like they have 15 bosses. Let's see, there are several hands on up. Start with the front. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I just have one question, Tony. It might be directed to you or to everybody about the voting. Now, I haven't been able to vote because we've been out of town, like the meeting, and so I asked about just sending my votes into Pat, and there's no process in place place, yeah, proxy vote. So if you have this whole new system where you're giving people choices and they're not able to vote because they're not here, or maybe they're home sick that day.
We're working on it. It's come to our
That's pretty
attention.
important.
I'm pretty sure by next year it'll be in place, but, you know, these things can't just happen without a little bit of
I understand that. No, I understand that, but I'm throwing it out for something to.
Yes, that is a question from new council, and as Joanne says, they can address that if they wish. The one thing I wanted to add is that there's a provision in the ECMN canons that prohibits voting by proxy or absentee vote. But that might also that can be dealt with. It's just that it is there, and it can be dealt with, but it also can't be ignored.
How many members will be on the council? And with the vote last week, maybe I missed it, are the results available, or they'll be available in a couple of weeks? Or?
No, they've been released. I'm sorry, it didn't get to you. There are 15 members of the council.
Was it by letter, or it's on the website? Or?
Shall I read them aloud right now?
If you'd like, would you like to hear?
It has, I don't think it has.
It was announced during the annual meeting last week.
But it
But
didn't.
if we weren't
Can't
there.
get it this week.
Hello.
Those elected to the council were Kathleen Murphy, Veronica Guevaras, George Ewing, Christine Slater, Chris Williams, Susan Links, and Louise Simons. 7. 2 of them will be filling one-year positions, and the others the regular 3 years.
I'm sorry if I missed something late, but I was just wondering,
This
is
is
there...
Veronica.
Hello. Do we have a theme for the council? I know, like Rich Simons, when he took over, he had the theme of doing church, and I'm just wondering, not that we have to have one, but I'm just wondering, has one percolated? Do we have a theme going forward?
Well, we haven't sat yet, so we really haven't. My theme for this morning was the gyroscope. And that's as far as we've gotten.
Okay.
Tried to use that just to sort of illustrate the way the hub works to keep the relationships between who the individual is and the other, and what it takes to get that going. But I really will have to get together and hopefully something will come out of that.
There's one more key to this that I think is important, and that is the success of the council is going to be the commitment of the council members. The world is run by those that show up, and those that show up, if they're excited and passionate about what they do, success is bound to happen. So, these
Yay to
elections-
you who showed up this morning. Thank you for taking an interest. It's not always the most interesting of topics, but thank you very much. We had a great time. It was a wonderful committee, this group, and I hope it continues to be as well peopled as it was. Great. I'm sure that there are such light all over this congregation that are just doing fantastic work. It's good to see. Good to be a part of.
And thank you all for your work, for that really important scaffolding and structure that needs to be there. That's really hard to make this work. Thank you for doing that.